Welcome to this episode of our program, Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing an important debate, and today we'll be speaking about this, or the highest royal visit to Egypt in 15 years. Today, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the First Lady, Mrs. Intisar, received the Crown Prince, or the British Crown Prince, and his wife at Al-Ittihadiyya Palace. He is in a Middle East tour, and the first leg was to Jordan, where he made several activities, and today and tomorrow he is in Egypt. This visit is a very significant one, since we're speaking about the first members of the royal family to carry out major overseas tours since the COVID-19 pandemic. And he chose those two destinations to go to: Jordan, Egypt. As for the royal tour, definitely it was demanded by the UK government and highlighted the important bonds between Britain and Egypt. The Prince of Wales is now the most senior member of the royal family to travel overseas, and his choice was, as I said, Jordan and Egypt. Today, the President was able to speak about a number of very important files during his meeting with Prince Charles, including the climate change, how Egypt is dealing with terrorism and extremist ideologies, how is Egypt dealing with a range of developments in the region, the pivotal role Egypt is playing in a number of files, regional and international. Climate change was one of the main issues that was topping the agenda of the talks, since Egypt will be hosting the COP27, and COP26 was just held in Glasgow conference, and where the President met with the Prime Minister and spoke about a number of issues of mutual concerns and means of enhancing collaboration between both countries. We'll be speaking about this royal visit to Egypt, the highest, as I said, since in 15 years, and the first for the Crown Prince after the coronavirus pandemic. We'll be speaking about that and highlighting the whole visit at large. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have this quick report with our colleague Ahmed Nader, who was accompanying the visits of the British Crown Prince, and we'll be back for more discussion.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Egypt's First Lady Intisar al-Sisi officially welcomed the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall at Al-Ittihadiyya Palace. Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and his wife Camilla Parker, the Duchess of Cornwall, are currently visiting Egypt. The Royal Highness's visit to Egypt is highlighting the country's close relationship with the United Kingdom and provides an opportunity to demonstrate the Egyptian growing commitment to protecting the environment. The UK Embassy had earlier stated that the Prince of Wales's visit comes immediately after the British hosting COP26 and the nomination of Egypt to host the COP27 presidency in 2022. The embassy also said that the Prince has a deep and long-standing interest in those issues and will be taking the opportunity to discuss how to best work together to combat the climate change, noting that the visit will also highlight the cultural heritage preservation and the religious tolerance across the Egyptian society.
We are intensely proud to have with us today the visit of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, coming back to Egypt for a third time. And it's a very important visit for all of us. It's a visit to Egypt which marks a time when relations between Egypt and the UK are very warm and very significant. It means a return to a country that he loves. He remembers his visit to Egypt, his first two visits to Egypt, with great happiness.
Prince Charles met with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmad Al-Tayyib, for discussions and dialogue on the religious harmony and the role of faith in preserving the environment. Also during the two-day visit, His Royal Highness met with the craftspeople and the artists, celebrating the traditional crafts and the UK support for preserving the cultural heritage as well as the skills of the artisans at Beit al-Razzaz. To support the Sustainable Markets Initiative that brings together the young entrepreneurs with the major companies from the private sector, the Prince of Wales discussed the opportunities for growing green, innovative business in Egypt. Meanwhile, the Duchess of Cornwall will focus on supporting the women's empowerment through learning more about the stories of the women leaders in Egypt and their efforts to promote the conservation. She will also learn more about how the female heads of households are coming up with ways of supporting themselves and their families. The Royal Highnesses will together attend a UK-Egypt reception to celebrate the bond between the two countries, to be held overlooking the pyramids at the magnificent Giza Plateau. And on the final day of the tour, the Royal Highnesses will visit the ancient city of Alexandria. This is the first foreign visit by Prince Charles outside of the United Kingdom ever since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic worldwide, and the third of its kind for Prince Charles to Egypt, highlighting the bilateral ties between Egypt and the United Kingdom. This is Ahmed Nader reporting for Nile TV International.
Right, welcome back, and that was a brief report on the activities of the Prince of Wales and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, today. And to highlight the whole visit, we have with us over the phone Dr. Noha Bakr, Professor of Political Science. It's a real pleasure to have you, Dr. Noha.
A pleasure to be on Nile TV. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Let me start here with your reading to this visit, the first highest trial visit to Egypt in 15 years, the first for the British prince or the highest royal member after the coronavirus pandemic. What does this visit reflect? And how does this portray the Egyptian foreign policy during the past period?
Well, actually, the visit reflects the warm relations between the two countries. The visit reflects the belief of His Royal Highness in the ability of Egypt to bridge gaps. We've seen how he has visited of course, he had his meeting with the president, where he discussed politics, he discussed terrorism, he discussed peace, he discussed various political aspects. He also had his visit with the Imam of Al-Azhar, which is a very important sign of the role that the Azhar plays. Also, we know that the Prince of Wales have had a scholarship since 2015 to Al-Azhar, where the sheikh or the different sheikhs goes to Britain for education there and comes back to Al-Azhar, which is a very good actually initiative done by him in order to enrich the capacity of Shuyukh Al-Azhar. We also have seen how the Duchess of Cornwall has, in her discussions with the First Lady in Egypt, discussed women empowerment, and I'm sure she was briefed about policies in Egypt to empower women and the political will to empower women in Egypt. Also, we know that Glasgow in Scotland have just hosted the COP26 for Climate Summit. And I'm sure that we all know that in Sharm el-Sheikh there will be COP27 for also the climate summit. And I'm sure that there has been exchange of views about climate change and what's expected in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. We know that Britain and Egypt, we have a total trade volume that has steadily increased in the last few years. In 2019, it it stood for 2 billion British pounds. And also we know that we have foreign investments, rich foreign investments. We have 900 companies worth investments in 2018, 2019 of $6.3 billion. We have very famous companies like British Petroleum, like Shell, among others. Egypt also can be very important to Britain after the Brexit. It can be the hub to Africa, and it can be the gateway to African countries, especially after the African Free Trade Agreement. So I think it was Egypt was very happy to host him, and I'm sure that he was very happy with the visit because of all the history that joins two countries and the rich bilateral relations.
Dr. Noha, very much indeed, you have said it all, or you briefed us on the whole visit, but there are certain files that are main focus for the visit, particularly for the Prince of Wales. Part of it is the opportunities for cooperation with Egypt. Part of it is how Egypt and the UK can work together for the climate change issue. Part of it is special concern of him, or special interest for him, for the interfaith dialogue, and particularly the climate in Egypt in which tolerance and coexistence prevail. Let me take here how the Prince of Wales is very much interested, or was very much interested, to discuss such issues with the President when they met this morning, or when the President received him at Al Ittihadiyya Palace.
Sure. This was part of the discussion, and we know that the Prince of Wales stands for bridging gaps between cultures, stands for tolerance, and he has also always been preaching for that. And I think this discussion has also continued with Sheikh Ahmed al-Taib, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, and other officials. We've seen Camilla wearing the hijab, and this was highly respected and praised in the Egyptian streets and among laymen when she met and when she went to Al-Azhar. Wearing the hijab was a sign of respect to the country culture and to the place she was visiting. We've seen how the Prince of Wales helped to start a British academic scholarship program that allowed Al-Azhar scholars to pursue degrees in Islamic studies in British universities, and returning back to work in Al-Azhar. We've seen how these soft security challenges are faced by Prince of Wales, have been addressed by Prince of Wales even before the world have been alert to it. The issue of climate change he has been discussing always. So I think that it all fits within the portfolio he holds to the world, and he is trying to present to the world.
Very much indeed. If I may finally here ask you about climate change, and how important is it for Egypt and Britain to address such an issue, which is considered a high threat, a global high threat in this upcoming stage?
Climate change is like exactly the pandemic that has hit the world. There are no borders for the threat that climate change produced the whole world. And it cannot be addressed except with cooperation worldwide. Cooperation to help developing countries through helping them to adapt to the climate change, and also to help them in order to support the fact, or to support stopping climate change through stopping emissions or limiting their emissions. There are lots to be done. There are lots not only of North-South cooperation, but also South-South cooperation, and benefiting from each other. Well, actually, it's not the role of states only. It's the role of states, of civil society, of academics, of media and press for raising public awareness. So it's an overall approach, and I think this is partially what Prince Charles is leading.
Very much indeed. Dr. Noah Bakr, Professor of Political Science, we thank you so much for being with us and for your input here. And let me welcome our guest here, who is with us in the studio, Ms. Yasmin Shaheen, researcher in international relations. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's my pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours. If I may start with the visit. And as we have seen, President Sisi was keen to receive the Crown Prince, the British Crown Prince, with his wife, and of course, President Sisi and the First Lady. And they discussed a number of issues, including working together or opportunities for collaborating between Egypt and the United Kingdom. How did you view this meeting, and how did you view, or how do you read the topics that were on the agenda of their discussion?
First, this visit is extremely important. It's of a paramount significance. As you mentioned, this is the first in 15 years. It's the first for the prince after the pandemic started. They are discussing common issues. We're on the same page regarding so many issues, including terrorism, climate change, illegal migration. So we're on the same page. So we have common interests. We no longer have conflict of interest. Therefore, for instance, climate change, which is, there is no single city or a country in this universe that's not threatened by climate change.
Indeed.
So for instance, Alexandria, which will be visited tomorrow, is one of the most cities that are threatened by climate change.
Exactly.
And that's why this visit is extremely important.
And I guess that Egypt is carrying out with one of the biggest projects that are there in order to preserve
yes.
Alexandria from the damage that would be caused.
Yes, exactly.
This delta area, the whole delta area.
Exactly,
yes?
And that's what President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said clearly in the COP26 in Glasgow. He said that Egypt will take huge several measures to protect Egypt and African countries from climate change damages, because African countries are not to be blamed for climate change. Like, we're facing the repercussions and the consequences
of what we did not do.
Yeah, but we didn't do anything, but we're paying for it. But he said, and he actually started doing several green projects. We're on the extremely right track on taking the right steps to correct what happened. That's totally not our mistake as African countries. I also think that this visit is extremely important in terms of terrorism and how this is an extremely important topic for Egypt and the UK, especially that after President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, after the domestic turmoil that happened before he took over the rule, he started taking several measures to eradicate terrorism, issuing several laws that would decrease this terrorism or eradicate it, almost eradicate it. So yes, I think that this visit is of paramount importance.
Imagine that the prince is coming right after we declared the lift of the emergency state from Egypt.
Yeah.
Imagine that that this is a visit in Egypt, which has just announced the new republic. If I may ask you about terrorism, indeed, terrorism or our way in fighting terrorism did not just limit itself to military actions or the interior ministry and the armed forces actions. No, actually we also tried to fight the extremism ideology.
Yeah.
This exact point is an interest for the Prince Charles, where he spoke with the president about the issue and continued with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad al-Tayyib. Not to mention that Grand Imam Ahmad al-Tayyib already held a number of meetings with a number of churches worldwide, the Vatican and the Evangelical and
that's
others.
an extremely important point, because why? Because President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had this on his agenda ever since he took over the rule. He had religious tolerance to be a major element in the agenda. One of the things that shows this is that in the administrative capital, the new administrative capital, you have a cathedral that's big as the mosque, which shows that we're all equal, we're all the same, and no one is a minority, so we're all the same, which is...
Actually, Egypt has always lived this kind of... We never had this problem, except for a very... Right. Getting back to what you were speaking about and to the issue of the climate change, and you said respectively that we've been carrying out with several measures in order to be able to contain the climate change repercussions. And let me here speak about the growing attention the leadership and the government has paid to the environment, encouraging, or the number of measures encouraging renewable energy, encouraging or seeking to reduce pollution in large cities, in Cairo and Alexandria and many other cities. Tell me about how the United, or how the Prince, or how the world at large, the Prince and the world at large is watching the Egyptian steps in that direction.
Everyone is impressed with what we're taking, with what we're doing towards sustainable development. Like, no one ever gets to visit Egypt during this period of time and is not fascinated by the fact that we're going towards sustainable energy, we're improving our transportation, we're having new museums so that we have an amazing preservation for the monuments. No one is not fascinated with what we're doing right now. So as my professor mentioned, Dr. Noha Bakr, Egypt is now, everyone is impressed with what we're doing. It's how we went from a turmoil to like a huge improvement is impressive to everyone.
Now, if I speak about the program of the visit of the Royal Highness here and the opportunity to celebrate the ancient culture of Egypt and the spiritual significance, and we spoke about that, the interfaith dialogue and all this, while also looking ahead to the modern Egypt, which is embracing a greener future. How far do you think that this will portray Egypt's image to the United Kingdom from in particular, and to Europe and the whole world on the other hand?
Okay, let me start by saying that Egypt has been always, for citizens of European countries and for UK citizens, it has been always a historical country. Like, they have a museum that's full of Egyptian monuments, okay? So it's always Egypt, okay? And it always has the legacy. But now it's different for the fact that our foreign policy, which is Egypt is back, is extremely emphasized.
Actually.
We're everywhere. We're developing in several aspects that are totally not related to each other. However, they complement each other in a fascinating way. So I think, especially the foreign policy part, everyone, especially African countries, we're back again on the track. European countries want to invest more in Egypt, economic ties to be emphasized and fostered. UK, US, it's like everyone wants to invest in Egypt and want to have strong ties with Egypt again.
Actually, I couldn't have say it more precise than you did. Egypt is back, indeed.
Yes.
It exactly is the image that, or the message that Egypt is sending to the world.
Okay.
If I may ask you here about important files that were raised. Here the Prince visited the leadership and then made several activities, including his meeting with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, and also some of the markets where he met with some of the entrepreneurs and the startups and all this. Also, the Duchess was focusing on the file of women empowerment in a way where she has attended a special celebration, Subuh, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about those files, because we're speaking about two important files that have been the main focus of our leadership and the government: investing in human calibers, empowering youth and women.
I think also one of the most important factors that you've highlighted is the private sector, which is booming nowadays, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi wants to have them on the track. He wants them to contribute. He wants them to be an active player on the scene. So that's a very important factor that should be emphasized, because private sector is booming nowadays, extremely booming.
Booming because of
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi agenda to have them as an active player on the scene.
With all the measures that the government have been taking, including encouraging the macro
and micro,
medium, and
exactly, which has he exerted a lot of effort to have these projects, the micro and macro projects, to encourage them, because I think that he wants them to be active on the scene.
Part of several presidential initiatives that were tackling how to invest in the human calibers, particularly the preparing youth entrepreneurs and startups, and how to encourage them and teach them. And Haya Karima, right?
Yes, exactly.
Investing in human calibers.
Yes.
Before we move on with our discussion, let me take this second report. And right before the visit of the British Crown Prince, there was this meeting between the President and the British Prime Minister in Glasgow, where the President attended the COP26. Let's watch this report.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi meets with world leaders.
وأعبر لكم عن خالص الشكر والتقدير على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة.
Reaffirming Egypt's vision, delivering our voice abroad.
لتطوير التعاون الثنائي الاقتصادي والعسكري إلى مستويات غير مسبوقة.
Discussing regional and international developments. Solid and strong relations on the path of partnership and development.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreed on opening new horizons of cooperation between the two countries as they met on the sidelines of the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow. This especially includes cooperation in the fields of investments, security, intelligence and military, as well as tourism, health and education. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said that during the meeting, Johnson congratulated President al-Sisi on the ambitious accomplishments and development efforts made by Egypt affirming the UK's support to these efforts. Johnson hailed the firm relations between Egypt and Britain and the growing progress witnessed by these relations recently. The British Premier also affirmed that Egypt is one of the main partners to the UK in the Middle East, expressing aspiration to deepen relations with Egypt in various fields. For his part, President Sisi expressed appreciation of the recent progress in bilateral relations with Britain in all fields, affirming Egypt's aspiration to maximize these relations and exchange visions with the UK on various issues of mutual concern. The head of state and Johnson discussed the latest developments in regional and international issues of mutual concern. The President voiced appreciation of Britain's efforts to ensure holding the climate summit despite all difficulties in light of the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on international meetings. He stressed Egypt's support to the British chairmanship of the conference and his confidence that it will come up with balanced results that benefit all parties. The President also affirmed Egypt's aspiration to host the 27th UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, COP27. A free trade agreement known as the Association Deal was signed between Egypt and the UK in December 2020 to provide a platform to deepen trade and investment relations between the two countries after Brexit. The new developments would contribute to promoting tourism and investment between Cairo and London.
Welcome back, and by the way, that was Wales, right?
Yeah.
So the Prince of Wales discussed opportunities for growing green, innovative business in Egypt through activities that support his sustainable market initiative that brings together young entrepreneurs and major companies from private sector. Mm-hmm. That is part of his interests. Mm-hmm. How is that being discussed, particularly in Egypt, and how does this go with our policy of empowering youth, entrepreneurs, private sector, encouraging them to the markets? Mm-hmm. Please.
Okay. It's like they align perfectly because, as I told you earlier before this report, President Abdel Fattah Sisi is encouraging the youth. He's facilitating everything for them to start their own startups, to have this micro and macro projects, and he's also trying to make it not bureaucratic. He's trying to get them on this track so that that's why actually the Prince is meeting with entrepreneurs to show that we're on the same page with regarding to youth empowerment and to private sector having it on track.
You know, part of investing in human cannabis was the issue of empowering women.
Yes.
Since we're speaking about half or 50% of this population are women.
Yeah.
And that this very particular file was very much highlighted by the leadership. Why are we wasting 50% or the effort that can be exerted by 50% of the population? Part of that is empowering women through different methods. Tell me about this this file and how Egypt has gone ahead with such a file?
I think we've taken huge steps with regards to women empowerment. I think this is unprecedented to have this number of women in the parliament, to have this number of women as ministers, to have them working everywhere, to have laws that support women, it's totally shifting to women, unlike what was happening before.
Now, I'm very interested to ask you why, because you're youth?
Yeah.
And because you're a woman?
Okay.
So I guess that you can tell me exactly how we are supposed to be, or how you are supposed to be feeling towards the measures that have been taken by the country so far in such directions.
My feeling?
You.
I feel so proud that we now have female ministers, like many female ministers, which did not happen before. That we have like a huge quota for women in the parliament. We're having laws that are supporting women. I feel that we're going out of what we've been going through during the past few years, which is great.
Part of that, or those initiatives, were empowering women who are households, who are the only one who are raising the family.
Yeah.
Part of it is how we can support women against all the
obstacles they face, because really being a woman everywhere, not only in Egypt, is hard. Like, you get to raise kids, you get to work, you get to, even as a housewife, you have so many responsibilities. So as a woman, it's too hard. So yes,
So from your point of view, do you think that the Prince and the Duchess were able to see that through the activities they've been through today?
Definitely. Everyone, not only through this visit, but everyone in the world can see the efforts that has been exerted in order to empower women in Egypt, which has been done through taking several measures, as we've talked about. So everyone, I think it's very highly clear to everyone that women empowerment, like, we're going on the right track regarding women empowerment.
How do you think that would reflect on our relations and cooperation with the United Kingdom in this upcoming stage?
It would foster the relationship very much, because back then our main issue with the UK and European countries in general was women empowerment, was human rights, like some issues that we've already got rid of, like women empowerment. Now we're empowering women, we have human rights, we have everything. So now I think we're on the right track regarding women empowerment. So this will affect the relationship positively, definitely.
What I meant here was the visit of the Prince to Egypt.
Yeah.
Seeing himself, because he made field visits to places, and he was totally free to see all those issues. Now, when I speak about opportunities between Egypt and the United Kingdom, particularly at the backdrop of the Brexit, because changes in the United Kingdom is also making it looking for other opportunities for other partners.
Cooperations, yes.
And the United Kingdom is our partner.
Yeah.
So if we speak about changing or the Brexit that has changed the dynamics and added to the impetus of the Cairo's relationship with London. So how do you view opportunities of cooperation between Egypt and the United Kingdom in this upcoming stage?
I see that after Brexit, ever since the UK has been independent, like our economic ties, our cooperation in general started to grow, because now it's dependent, and it's independent. Like they don't need to, they act freely without getting back to anyone, which is affecting our economic ties positively, unlike what was happening before.
What opportunities do you think, when we speak about the United Kingdom, we're speaking about a huge partner.
Yeah.
We're speaking about more than 900 companies working here in Egypt. We're speaking about one of the biggest economic partners. So, how far does this open other horizons of cooperation between Egypt and the United Kingdom in this upcoming stage?
What do you mean by how far? How far it opens? You mean investment opportunities,
I mean
for instance?
investment, I mean coordination on several files, I mean collaboration on several paths.
I mean
opportunities, real opportunities for investment.
Okay. I mean, ever since the Brexit happened, and we've already started collaboration on several files, we're having great economic ties. I think that has been the case ever since Brexit took place back in 2016.
Just a few minutes ago, you said an important statement or message that Egypt was very much keen to deliver through its foreign policy. Egypt is back. So we're not speaking about Egypt is back to the United Kingdom, but rather Egypt is back to the whole world. So how far has Egypt been able to invest in new forms of regional alignments?
I think that now, not really now, starting 2014, ever since President Sisi took over, we've gone again to
assumed
office. We've gained again the relationships back with the African Union, unlike what was happening before, in the Arab League, in the UN, and everywhere. So around the region, in Africa, in Europe, in US, in the UK, anywhere, now we're back after a huge domestic turmoil. So now, for instance, Egypt, for the UK, as Dr. Noha mentioned, is the gateway for Africa. It's the most important country in the region. Now we've regained all the power we've lost back then.
You're an Egyptian.
Yeah.
And now I'm giving you the chance to promote Egypt and to speak about Egypt from your own perspective, telling our European partners and our foreign friends how they would be able to pursue their own interests in a more stable and prosperous Egypt, and how is Egypt, or how Egypt is playing a pivotal role in this very particular issue, which is stabilizing and working for the prosperity, not just of the Middle East, but from the Middle East, Africa, and definitely
the whole
Egypt.
world.
Please.
Yes. I really don't know how to say it, but do you mean how would they say to foreigners that Egypt is on the right track? Is that the...
I mean, you're Egyptian.
Yeah.
Tell me, how can you promote Egypt?
I could
But I have
promote
only-
Egypt that we have huge women empowerment, where we have youth empowerment, we have the president is empowering micro and macro projects. We're having a huge culture preservation. We have the Museum of Civilizations, which is huge, which is fascinating to everyone. You can practice whatever you want, whatever faith you want,
Yes.
and you would be respected.
So can we say in few words, Egypt, we have it all?
We have it all, definitely.
Yasmin Shaheen, a researcher in the international relations. We thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Dear viewers, I guess that this is a great pleasure to have His Royal Highness here in Egypt, the Prince of Wales. I guess that Egypt is always welcoming its guests. I guess that was just a welcome episode for this important visit that will definitely reflect on relations between Egypt and the United Kingdom in this upcoming stage. Many thanks for watching. Goodbye.